For the last 7 months, the focal point has been off air. I know most of you have been wondering as to what happened. It's not that I abandoned it, not at all. I took time off to focus on many issues that I plan to share with you in our subsequent programs. Towards the end of last year, I developed interest in the Batwa, a small minority ethnic Pygmy community in Kisoro, southeastern Uganda. Now, you may need to know that the Pygmies are an African tribe found in many parts of Central Africa, Cameroon, Central African Republic, DR Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, and Uganda. Now, each of these countries has a particular name for the Pygmies. For example, those living in Bundubujo and the forest at the foot of Mount Rwenzori are known as Abambuti, whereas those in Kisoro, Rwanda, and Burundi are referred to as Batwa. Now, generally, Pygmies are physically short people with relatively pronounced facial features. In Kisoro, they lived in windy impenetrable forest and the Chuya bamboo forest from where they were evicted in the early 80s after gazetting the area in the forest as the forest reserves. Today, the Batwa have been forced to live a totally different lifestyle with other ethnic tribes in the area, a situation that has subjected them to prejudice, discrimination, and marginalization. Now, join me as I attempt to examine the plight of this minority community. Windy impenetrable forest, an expansive forest that straddles the three Great Lakes region of Uganda, Rwanda, and the DRC. It is home to numerous species of animals, key among which is the mountain gorilla. It is believed that Bwindi has the largest gorilla population of the estimated 600 of these endangered apes in the world. This is part of a Chuya Forest Reserve, 34,000 hectares of natural thick bamboo vegetation, another forest that forms part of Greater Kisoro area to the southwestern part of Uganda. The two forests were gazetted for conservation in the early 1930s by the colonial government, with limited access given to the local inhabitants. Kisoro area is inhabited by the Bafumbira people, who comprise three major ethnic tribes, the Hutus, the Tutsis, and the minority Batwa. In 1991, when government decided to declare the two forests full protected areas, they were home to Batwa. Before they were evicted from here, the Batwa lived a hunter-gatherer lifestyle who ecologically exploited the forest for their livelihood and peacefully coexisted with the rest of the animal species therein. Government's move to evict the Batwa from the forest were taken without providing them alternative place of abode. In desperation, the Batwa ended up squatting on peripheries of the areas inhabited by the majority Hutus and Tutsis, where they currently live in a landless life of squalor, poverty, and extreme deprivation. Today, the population of Batwa in Kisoro district stands at 1,600 people.
We have 19 Batwa communities in the whole district. And when we talk of a Batwa community, we are talking about, say, an average of 25 households.
Stephen Rumazimishi is a resident of Birara, a few kilometers away from Kisoro town. Rumazimishi lives here in a single-roomed mud and water house with his wife and two children. The family moved here 3 years ago after roaming from one settlement to another. He reminisces the time he lived in the Chuya forest, as he demonstrates how the Batwa used the bow and arrows to hunt animals for food. Today, there are no animals for him to hunt. All that is left for him to spear is this earth-filled sack placed at the corner of a half-acre piece of land he now considers to be his.
no mu makanyumba kari no hifaho abwo kuba buri muntu bakaza bane bamu hatushatu kungatindamanya yaba nihika ya niki abwo kuba nyote ndatinyine chipimo katindamanya kushoma ngo nkareba ko barapima nyo nkareba barangambira bati shutama.
In 2005, ADRA, an Adventist relief organization that has for a number of years been involved in the welfare of the Batwa, secured a substantial chunk of land here at Birara to settle the Batwa communities. 28 families were each allocated a small plot on which they built the mud and water houses. In total, 70 Batwa found their new home here. Unfortunately, none of them can tell the size of his or her plot in terms of acreage, let alone the proof of ownership. Kashanga Efrans, weeds have been gardened. The garden, which covers approximately 10 meters by 10, is the larger part of what she considers to be her land, plus the space where her mud and water house is built. She lives here alone. Her husband died long before she moved here. She says all her children also died from mysterious illnesses. Like many Batwa, Efrans does not know her age. An estimation could place her at over 75, old enough to remember the good old days in the forest.
Tukatura mu kibira turi kugira ki turi mu kujya bushimba bwo bunyehamba tukajya obuhura bwo mu butaka kuburima tukajya obundi bwo mu biti mu buyuki ebyo nibyo byatubesagaho naki nabwa bunyama bwo mu rugano akasimba kona turabona turakajya.
Today they have learned cultivation, although the surrounding ethnic communities take them as a useless lot.
Nubwo turahinga taturamenya guhinga ekiriho ngo turabigisha koko bahize batwigisha turahinga nubwo turahinga ariko tatutebekenye nko kugira ngo nkuko abahinzi bahunikaga ibihume tukapfa kwihangana ngo mbeko batukwiye mu ambagetu ubu turajya ki.
Besides food, a Chuya forest was not only a source of herbal medicine for the Batwa, but also bamboo for constructing their houses. Today, the Batwa can access a Chuya to cut old bamboo only after paying a stipulated fee.
Utugano, natunga shilingi 10 naza gukorera umuturage nkiwe ukamparwa 10 ndarutwari roha office arampereza utugano nitwondiriza kuba gisace akanyumba kanjaka.
They do pay like any other local person. When you are collecting the bamboo, when you want to sell them, or even if you want to use them, you have to pay. But the firewood, that one is accepted for only the Batwa, and every day.
To get money to pay for the bamboos, they are poor people.
Well, that one I don't know. They say that it's a policy. We've been lobbying them, but they said that everyone who goes in, the challenge is they know that the Batwa, if they go to the bamboo forest to cut the bamboo, they will definitely be selling them, and the non-Batwa, the local people, do raise a concern that the Batwa also sell the bamboo.
Although many have built themselves shelters and settled here at Birara, some have had to abandon their plots and head back to Chisoro town, where they expect to find easy life by doing odd jobs.
Their source of livelihood is here. They crush stones, sell aggregates. They go to well of people, they wash clothes, they clean the compound, they go to bars and hotels, they get everything. So they say for them they will not go very far from the town center.
This is one of the numerous sites that have been abandoned by the Batwas. There used to be a house here, but they had to abandon it and go to town looking for better places, maybe to sell their labor to be able to sustain themselves. But the reason they left these houses was that they were not properly constructed because they didn't have money to construct good houses. And secondly, the land was not sustainable. They were not able to plant crops because of the terrain, and the fertility of the soil was not very good. Because they were not able to get building materials, so what they would use their blankets to put up the houses. As you can see, they have been abandoned. Estimated to be in his late 70s, Yohana Ndagadwa lives in this single-roomed mud and water house with his wife Sarah Nyiramumbirizi. He is one of the older members of the surviving generation that vividly remembers their life in the jungles. With his bow and arrow in hand, Ndagadwa bitterly laments that time when they were brutally evicted from the forest.
Twabaga mu shamba turaza turatangira tukuhakwaho tumaze kuguhakwaho utwerekaho kuba igihe tukunaniye utimvira mu butaka tukagumya kugenda.
Right from the jungle times, Yohana has been a maker of traditional smoking pipes. Although he still does, the clientele base has dwindled significantly as Batwa have taken up the modern ways, cigarettes. He is one of the few lucky ones that got slightly bigger plots. But even then, he has no proof of ownership. Many Batwa who have not chanced to get a share of the Adra land have remained squatting on other people's land. Jackson Rangano and his wife Dorothea Ninamuromba, together with their 5 children, live in this house built within a homestead of a local Nonu Mutwa in the outskirts of Kisoro town. In all his entire life, Rwangano has known no other home than here.
Nje nagiye kuvuka nsanga badata baraha ntaho nzigihe bo bahagire.
Niwe yakwira?
Ni banyiraga mukabahampaye.
Yabaho ukeza mu mwaka cya.
Simpisi. Nje nayinkuriye hano ntaho nzigihe no kumbyanje nabyariwe hano. Ariko none nko mu gihe tutagasomaga n'ababyeyi bacu batasomye taho n'ubwambaza agapapuro kakavukire ntaho nakakubwira. Nirya abantu z'abanyiri baranyubakiye gusa ndubwo mbenda hatswe ubu bashaka baranyirukaho ngo ubwo kagenda karibyo naje
winzi utabudirita keri yawe
ndigire ndibonesha iki
usende wo gukora ukagiye
ndakorera shiringi 1000 nzagwize miliyoni 3 nangenye nkagura umurimo.
In the mid-90s, in a bid to address the plight of Batwa in Kisoro area, Church of Uganda through the Diocese of Muhabura launched a project where a small plot of land was secured here in the outskirts of Kisoro town, on which 19 blocks were erected to house 19 families of landless Batwa. The project was spearheaded by Shalita, then Bishop of Muhabura Diocese.
On 14th January 1990, I said I'm going to help to find a way we can help the Batwa in my diocese. And I took it as my responsibility. I tried to find out how they are living. I went to their houses. I shared with them. We discussed. And I felt that I should share this with the international bodies, especially the churches which I was visiting in the United States and Germany. So one thing was to find how we can build houses for them. And many people were opposing this because they felt that the Batwa may not live in those houses. I said, well, let us try. If they don't accept to live in these houses, we shall see. So I raised the money with an organization in Germany, and they gave us some money to put up the houses, the flats, 2 rooms each family, for just 2 rooms, which I felt probably could make a change.
The project was subsequently criticized for lack of proper planning.
There was no provision for the pit latrine, there was no provision for the kitchen, there was no provision for... So it was lack of consultation at that time. And this should be a lesson for other development partners. And they have to consult with the beneficiaries and the government.
Today, the Batwa who live here have no land on which to grow food, let alone facilities like water and sanitation. As a result, they have resorted to begging on the streets of Kisoro town, as well as being subjected to exploitation through hard labor with very little pay. Ironically, the project is located directly opposite Kisoro District Administration headquarters, a constant reminder of government's failure to address the problem of the Batwa.
They are living in the RDC's offices. They are his neighbors. What can he do with the neighbors? He's the one. If there is a problem, they are the first to go and help them. But the question is, do they see them? And if they see them, what plan do we have for them?
The Kisoro District local government is willing to resettle the Batwa. But it is a process. Because public land is controlled by the district land board, and the council committees, that is production and the community development, have to work out a document which details which lands have been identified, whether they have discussed with the sub-counties, and then they take a report to council for council's approval.
The Batwa regard the eviction from the reserve by government without providing them an alternative place, as placing animals and plants over and above them. Although the Uganda Wildlife Authorities say a percentage of revenue accrued from tourism goes to the Batwa communities, the Batwa say they merely hear of it.
Titukatunga na shilingi 5 gashibirita. Ahubwo kubamanya bo uramanya barabikorera kuriya. Zaba zijire izo ne zabo. Ahubwo kuba titwinoko tukabimanya. Ahubwo kuba titushomire, titwinu umwana ushomire. Ngo na wakaruga nkaha azonke foko nko mu ma office ahurikize byo ninga amagomborora ahurikize nke byo baracika. Ahurikize nka nkebira rugoko amajugarare twoku nagarare twoku. Itwe titwindo uko tukabimanya. Habwo kubitwe turinkaye turi hansi y'abigere byabo.
Interestingly, there seemed to be no readily available evidence to show where the money goes that directly benefits the Batwa.
It may be difficult for us to draw a line that now this is going to Batwa community, because Batwa do not live in separate villages on their own. These monies are dispersed at sub-county level, at parish level, and then trickles down the villages. If we put a school in a parish, we expect that all those communities living in that parish benefit from that school. The same thing with a clinic. So we wouldn't say that we are putting up a school specifically for Batwa children to go to school.
Sembagare Francis is the chairman of the Birara Batwa. He represents the Birara Batwa in government and NGOs that focus on minority communities. He is charged with the task of articulating pertinent issues affecting the Batwa people. Being a leader means better housing and additional privileges.
Imanda busasa yibombe rwibunye ntombora njewe ndi umutwe wo birora mwoko gira imana mwe mbara zusukuza bigora mu Rwanda rimwe se kitari gitenye bitotwa byarindi mwo bambara tarakakara ngewe ndi umutwe ndimo ndasaba ubuyambi ndasaba kavumenti ubuyambi mwoko byaramwe ngigerageze kutuyamba nkatwa abatwa birara ndetse n'abatwa Uganda bose mwoko gira imana mwe turasaba ubuyambi baranyita Sembagare Francis ngewe umutwe wo muri birara ndirukane kamakuza rwagitingwa ndisatimanuka nyisuri ndi basanirege basumba kirunga n'uwo bambara tarakakara ndikigenza kinyihiro ndishimira aba bagira neza baze kutureba muzadutumikire nkatwa abatwa mwuka byaramwe muri kubona twaguye hasi kubwo gutahinga kutagira aho guhinga naho dufite akatabo dufite nako ntikera neza turasaba ngo baduha agataka karera mwuka byaramwe bagira neza turabatumye mudutumikire none nditwivunya nta marwanda arindwa disegitari gitengera bito twabyarugina n'uwo bambara taratakakara inanga yanje garukiye aho baranyita Francis icyo dushaka kugira ngo nuko dusaba ubuyambi kuko n'aka gataka kacu katari kwera neza turasaba nk'ubu tubonye ubutaka burera twakomezamo tugakoresha amaboko gacu natwe tukihangana nka gavumenti tuyambye bagaduha agataka kaboneye twahinga tukabona ngo turatungutse natwe tubaye abantu nk'abandi.
Apart from the local area leadership, the Batwa have their overall leader who lead them along a succession system. John Ribaka is the current overall chief of the Batwa in the Bufumbira area. Among his people, Ribaka is revered as a king and represents them both at local and international fora. He strives to articulate his people's plight, especially with regard to the land issue.
Na cyane cyane turashaka kugira ngo tubone ubutaka abana bacu bige kandi bave mu mazu meza bagira amazu meza kandi babona aho bari guturuka baraje kwiga cyane nico twiganzaho no gufata isuka ibintu bibiri kwiga no gufata isuka ndetse n'indi myuga yo gukora hari ubwamakanika n'ububaji byose twabikora kuko dufite intoki dufite n'ubwenge tugomba gukora.
With support from minority communities focused organizations, Batwa have been mobilized and formed an NGO which acts as a platform to address their plight. United Organization for Batwa Development in Uganda, UBDU.
This was established in the year 2000 by the Batwa themselves.
What are the objectives?
The organization aims at raising awareness mainly on the land problem and other human rights issues like right to education, right to health, and other rights for any other citizen of Uganda. Originally, the organization was to capture all the areas where the Batwa are in Uganda, but because of the adequate resources, this organization started working with the Kisoro Kabara and Kanongo, but towards the end of 2007, because of the communication from other Batwa from outside the Chijes region, we had to visit them to see whether they are Batwa and to see their needs as well. So we are working with the Kisoro Kabara and Kanongo, together with Intungamo, Mbarara, and some Batwa from Masaka in Katovu. We have an intention of visiting those of Bondibudjo, although sometimes when we have meetings here, we inform one of their leaders to come and attend.
The introduction of government universal primary education has accorded Batwa children an opportunity to join the rest of the children from other ethnic tribes to pursue education.
Today we've got 14 Batwa children in secondary school. That one is really very good achievement.
However, the number of Batwa children both in primary and secondary schools would have been higher if food problem was addressed.
They are facing some challenges of having no lunch, especially to those who do not have where they are based. They do drop out. The number of dropping out is very, very hard. I mean, it's very big because the moment they don't have lunch, and maybe at night they didn't have supper, they completely drop out.
15-year-old Nyawira Fiona is in primary 4. She lives with her parents and 4 siblings in this single-roomed mud and water house. She has to do her homework before it gets dark because the family cannot afford paraffin to fuel up the candle. Her ambition is to become a teacher.
God teachers.
In spite of attempted sensitization, the non-Batwa surrounding communities' deep-rooted prejudice against Batwa has not changed. A large percentage of them still look at Batwa as less intelligent, backward human beings who are still engrossed in primitive caveman ways and are not ready to change.
They are not yet mature to see that we can call them human. 100%. So you think they are not 100%? They are not yet. They are still developing.
To the contrary, the Batwa have demonstrated their ability to adapt and even integrate Western values.
Those who have something to offer. In fact, the other day I was with them. They told me in the local language that ni ba mukunda ufite. That means that those who have land and have some income and have something to share with the rest, they are not underlooked. But those ones who still beg and don't have something to offer and still squat on other people's land, those ones are still despised.
In spite of the shortcomings, the struggle to address the plight of the Batwa is now adopting a multi-pronged approach. Non-governmental organizations such as Care International have developed programs both at lobbying level as well as provision of basic facilities.
We believe in improving the livelihoods of the very poor. In other words, our broad agenda is also contributes to the government's agenda of poverty reduction. So our belief is that marginalization and discrimination are one of the underlying causes of poverty. So when we tackle the Batwa situation, when we try to improve the Batwa situation, then we are contributing directly to the government goal of poverty reduction.
While opinion local leaders are also playing an advocacy role.
I would say the immediate solution is to get them land, and they are settled, and when they are settled, then we can help them, we can teach them, and then they can be like other people. I'm sure if a Mutwa becomes rich, everybody would love to go to him. And another thing is that nowadays even people go to the bar with them, and they are drinking together. So I don't see why really we can't help them.
Well, this year I learned that efforts have been made by the local authorities to find an appropriate land to settle the Batwa. However, the unanswered question still remains as to how long it will take for the other ethnic tribes to get rid of the prejudice against the Batwa and look at them as real fellow human beings that deserve equal treatment.